Lots of great news to talk about. Some of you have mentioned, and I saw this earlier, but I thought I'd just wait a little while to see if we could get some more information. But on the red heifers that are needed for the sacrifice to purify the Levites and all of the children of Israel, all the people of Israel, to purify them, these red heifers. I'm going to read this article out of 365, Israel 365. It's a great, it's not a YouTube channel, but it's a website that you can subscribe to. They'll send you the emails. It's most of you already know about it. That listen to this channel, you know about it. I try not to talk about too many things that I know you guys are already into and interested in, but this one is interesting, and I want to refer to a couple things. So I'm just going to read this. The Temple Institute, which is it's another. They do have a YouTube channel. It's fascinating. They have a little study every week, but you can get all kinds of information from the Temple Institute. We've talked about them before. I've actually been in with my son in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, where the menorah that will be in the temple is showcased. It's beautiful. The temple. Okay, so I'm quoting now from the Israel 365. The Temple Institute, and I'll hammer some names here, so just go with it, okay? Boneh Israel made a huge step towards reinstating the temple service on Thursday when 5 red heifers landed at the international airport, Tel Aviv, right? Okay, the red heifer was the main component in the biblically mandated process of ritual purification for impurity that results from proximity or contact with a dead body. Because the elements needed for this ceremony have been lacking since the destruction of the Second Temple, all Jews today are considered ritually impure, thereby preventing the return of the temple service. The Temple Institute launched its red heifer program about a decade ago. This really gets interesting. Led by Rabbi Ariel, okay. But even in temple times, an animal that fulfilled the biblical requirements was exceedingly rare. Failing to produce a suitable candidate from ranchers in Israel, the Temple Institute began investigating alternative sources for a red heifer. Boneh Israel, an organization that connects Christian lovers of Israel to the Holy Land, stepped in to help. Led by Byron Stinson, a native Texan, sounds like, should be Stetson, right? But Stinson, Boneh Israel understood ranchers. I didn't set out to do this, but right now I am probably the best red heifer hunter in Texas, Byron quipped. The Bible says to bring a red cow to purify Israel, and I may not understand it, but I am just doing what the Bible said. You know, I love that. I do. I love the rawness of that. I love that. The prophecies came true, and the Jews are back in Israel, Byron said. Now they need to build a temple, but it's like buying a really nice car. If you don't have the key, you aren't going anywhere. The red heifer is the key to making the temple work like it's supposed to. Ooh, this is good stuff. Boneh Israel took out full-page ads in ranching magazines explaining the situation to ranchers. They requested that any red calves be set aside. Several years ago, the farmer is a devout Christian who became intensely interested in the biblical commandment. Stinson explained to Israel 365 News. He began breeding cattle for this trait. So when my team and I set out to search ranches in Texas for red heifers, his were already better suited. One of the major difficulties was that the government requires tagging. Okay, get this. This is so fascinating. And I'm going to make an editorial comment on this. But listen to this. Okay, I'm quoting again. One of the major difficulties was the government requires tagging calves right after birth. The ear tag creates a hole in the calf's ear, a blemish that disqualifies the calf for the mitzvah. The farmer explained that because of COVID, the employee who normally puts in the tags did not come to the farm when these calves were born. The whole reason for COVID could have been to preserve these calves. You know, the Lord will take, this is a possibility, right? That the Lord will take a horrible situation, and most of us on this channel know about that, and use it. Played it like a fiddle, and therefore these calves were preserved, and no ear tags, therefore not disqualifying them. I'm quoting again from Israel 365. A team of rabbis from the Temple Institute flew out to inspect the calves last year. The requirements were incredibly demanding, requiring that there be no more than 2 non-red hairs on the entire calf. It must also never have been used for any labor or have any been impregnated. That's the definition of heifer, really. The heifer must be 2 years and 1 day old to be suitable for the ceremony. Sometimes a calf that is perfectly red when it is young develops black or white hairs as it grows older, or may develop a blemish. Sometimes the colored hairs fall out or disappear. Certifying the calf requires a complete and intensive inspection in which a rabbi knowledgeable in the laws goes over the entire calf with a magnifying glass. I'm going to skip a little bit here, but the Jews don't need, this is a quote from the Temple Institute, the Jews don't need to be pure to build the temple or bring the public sacrifices, Conan explained. On the other hand, purity will take it to the next level and will facilitate rebuilding the temple and doing the service. So in other words, the calves, the purification of those calves will then allow the temple to be built. Education is essential to move forward for the Jews and non-Jews, Conan said. Boneh Israel is an Israeli organization whose main goal is education. The cows were between 5 and 8 months old. To be suitable for the red heifer ceremony, the cow must be 2 years and 1 day old. So these heifers will be raised in Israel until they reach the proper age. The article goes on, but it's really, really awesome to have this happen. Now, some people will say, not necessary. Well, just hold your horses here. Let's look at an article from the Church News. This is dated, in the Church News, it's entitled The Law of Sacrifice, and it's dated January 30th, 1993. And this is really interesting. I've talked about this before, but I think this validates the need for these sacrifices. So I'm quoting from the Church News, January 30th, 1993. You can just Google this, put in Church News, Law of Sacrifice, Sons of Levi, LDS, something like that, and it'll pop up. I'm going to skip a little bit and then read this part. So I'm quoting from the Church News, 1993, January 30th. The sons of Levi historically were worthy male members of the Levitical tribe chosen by Moses to administer in the ordinances of the priesthood under the presidency of Aaron and his sons. Joseph Smith taught that the future offering unto the Lord in righteousness, to which John referred, is literally a sacrificial offering as was performed anciently. The offering of sacrifice has ever been connected and forms a part of the duties of the priesthood. And he wrote that in 1840. So this was He'd had a little bit of life experience by this time. It began with the priesthood and will be continued until after the coming of Christ from generation to generation. These sacrifices, as well as every ordinance belonging to the priesthood, will, when the temple of the Lord shall be built and the sons of Levi be purified. Ooh, see? And that's from the restoration of the Aaronic priesthood, right? And the red heifer will do that biblically. And the sons of Levi be purified, be fully restored and attended to in all their powers, ramifications, and blessings. This ever did and ever will exist when the powers of the Melchizedek priesthood are sufficiently manifest. Else, how can the restitution of all things spoken of by the holy prophets be brought to pass? Now, this word restitution is interesting, because what has our prophet said today? That the restoration is continuing, okay? This possibly could be, I know there's a weird light there, but this possibly could be that continuing restoration, okay? Oh boy, where did I get to? Fully restored, attended in all the powers around blessing. And the restitution of all things spoken of by the holy prophets brought to pass. Okay. It is not to be understood that, this is key to understand this. It is not to be understood that the law of Moses will be established again with all its rites and variety of ceremonies. This has never been spoken of by the prophets, but those things which existed prior to Moses' day, namely sacrifice, will be continued. Okay? It may be asked, because I've heard this before, when the sons of Levi will again offer up an offering in righteousness, that happens in the temple every day, in all the Latter-day temples. That's baloney. It's not true. It's not true. It may be asked, I'm quoting again this article. It may be asked by some, what necessity for sacrifice since the great sacrifice was offered? In answer to which, if repentance and baptism and faith existed prior to the days of Christ, what necessity for them since that time? The priesthood has descended in a regular line from father to son through their succeeding generations. And that's a quote by Joseph Smith, History of the Church, Volume 4, page 211 to 212. And then Joseph Fielding Smith explained it this way. The sacrifice of animals, this is a quote by Joseph Fielding Smith and quoted in this article. President Joseph Fielding Smith explained, the sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built. This is one of the definitions of the restoration is continuing, is that we have to have animal sacrifices again. Let me start that. President Joseph Fielding Smith explained, the sacrifice of animals will be done to complete the restoration when the temple spoken of is built at the beginning of the millennium or in the restoration. Blood sacrifices will be performed long enough to complete the fullness of the restoration in this dispensation. This is a quote here. Afterwards, sacrifice will be of some other character. See, this is awesome. And I think it's oftentimes overlooked. So you have, we don't have a temple yet where this will be done. My feeling is this is talking about the temple in Jerusalem. And it is funny, when I did that video with Dennis, the Pentecostal preacher and the great guy from New York City, and that is now employed by Cardio Miracle, and it's just he's such a kind soul. Well, also in our little meeting that we had of people, like-minded people with the Cardio Miracle and doing some work there with them. There was a doctor from Florida who's Jewish, and he's from the tribe of Levi, and so we had him there, and I asked him. I said, "Well, what faith are you?" When he goes, "Well, I'm Jewish," and I said, "Well, how Jewish are you?" He says, "Well, I'm from the tribe of Levi." It's like, yeah, it's awesome. Well, sitting right next to him at the table was a great gentleman who had just been called to be a bishop and of a ward in Utah, and I said to the Jewish guy, I said, "He has more right to be a bishop than you do. He's from the tribe of Levi." So it's kind of funny. Anyway, this is so fascinating and such interesting stuff. Now, I understand that a lot of people feel like, in fact, there is a quote somewhere here, I believe by Bruce R. McConkie, but that might have been in a different article that I read. But Bruce R. McConkie felt that they needed to be converted from the tribe of Levi, and then Jews, tribe of Levi, converted in order to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and have that priesthood. But Joseph Smith has said and made statements towards that the Levites are the true right. They have the right to that priesthood, a pure Levite. I can't remember the exact quote, but I can find it later. Anyway, it's pretty fascinating, this idea of the red heifers that so far fit, and that purification, which is part of the process here, that they need to be purified, and then the temple can be built, and then other sacrifices can be made in that temple. So this is really good. So there's that. Now, I want to talk about another article, totally changing subjects here. This appeared on KSL.com, KSL news source, and it has to do with the vaccine, and I'm very disturbed by this, very disturbed that Latter-day Saints don't appear to be following the prophet, and it's really bothering me. Let me read this article. This is just posted September 19th at 5:49 p.m. In 2022. So it's very upsetting that there's so many people that appear to be not following the prophet. Just over 7% of Utah children under 5 years old have gotten at least their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, according to the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. Just over 7%. That means close to 93% have not. And they're not following the prophet. Now let's read why. Nationwide, only 6% of the children under 5 have received. So a little bit higher than nationwide. That's probably because there's just a few more people that are following the prophet, but not very many. Let's look at this. This is a quote, and I'll tell you by who here. It is very disappointing that we have had such low uptakes of the vaccine. It is very safe and effective. It's a very safe and effective vaccine for kids. Dr. Andrew Pavia, Chief of Pediatric Infectious Disease at the University of Utah and Director of Epidemiology at Primary Children's Hospital, told the Deseret News. So, trusted medical professional, told by the prophet, urging us and stating, this was stated that it was safe and effective, and yet you Latter-day Saints who claim to be following the prophet, just over 7% of you are doing this after it's been told to you by a doctor that it's safe and effective. What is going on? Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Some of you are going to say, well, we prayed about it and we got the confirmation that our young son or daughter, baby, infant, 6-month-old, shouldn't get it. Really? Really? You really got that confirmation? You really got that confirmation? So in Utah, let's say 70% are Latter-day Saints, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And a bunch of them have children, and a bunch of them are young. And just a small percentage of you have taken your 6-month-old or 5 or under to 6-month-old and had them get this. Now, did you really get that answer that you shouldn't vaccinate your child? Did you really get that confirmation from above, from God, that you shouldn't? Or are you just not doing it because you prefer not to follow the prophet? This is very upsetting to me. And I'm just as disappointed as Dr. Andrew Pavia. Okay? So there you have it. Very, very upsetting. As of the most recent update by the state last Thursday, Utah recorded nearly 2,500 new cases of COVID-19, along with a dozen additional deaths from the virus. Utah's death toll has now passed another grim milestone with 5,001 lives lost, including 7 among children and teens, 1 to 14 years old. The virus continues to pose other risks to children too, the article says. But then here it is. Over the course of the summer, where people had thought COVID had gone away, we had a sustained high level of hospitalizations for children for COVID in Utah around the country. See, guys, why aren't you doing it? So, it's not grabbing headlines, but it's still there. Okay. So the article continues. You can look it up and read it. KSL.com. And the title of it is COVID-19 vaccination rates for young children are very disappointing, Utah doctor says. That's the title of the article. So, you guys have some explaining to do, some splaining of why you're not taking your 6 month to 5-year-old and getting them that vaccine. It's so important. And it is this doctor who's with the University of Utah, Primary Children's Hospital, director of all these institutions, has said that it's safe and effective. So you're either telling me that you received a revelation from God to not do it, or you're choosing not to follow the prophet. It's the way I see it. Very disappointed. Very disappointed. So there you have it. You guys are awesome. Sometimes parody is a good way to approach things. sometimes you need a way to express yourself so that certain people can understand. You know, it could even be considered somewhat of a parable in a way, where you teach a certain way by almost saying the opposite thing. You know, it's just a way to do things sometimes. So I don't know. We'll see how things go. But I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast. You guys are amazing. I love your comments. I don't reply to all of them. I have a hard time getting to emails. It's my bad. But I read everything. It's just taking the time to reply. But your comments, I've said several times to people that your comments, you state it way better than I do. And I mean that sincerely. So what you say and what you do is important to this channel because we leave it open. I've deleted hardly any. Now, sometimes your comments don't get through. It's not me doing it. I promise you. Only really snarky, nasty kind of comments will I get rid of. And that's hardly ever. But most, even if they're disagreeable, you know, leave them up and let things go. But occasionally I have to. So that's it. Love you all. We will talk to you soon. And we will see what happens here in the next few days. Love you all, and bye-bye.